Alright, hello and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about the kind of question that I think can come up a lot when we're trying to be conscious, when we're trying to support ourselves, when we're trying to be self-loving and, like I said, self-supportive, is the whole idea of okay, there's the kind of one camp that tells us we need to feel our feelings, right? The feel it to heal it. You need to be able to feel your anger and feel your sadness and acknowledge your emotions for how they are. And that in doing that, you are going to process, you're going to heal, you're going to come to a better place. And then the kind of opposite end of the spectrum, where people are saying we need to reach for better feeling thoughts, we need to look for better feeling emotions, that we are in control of our emotions to a degree, and that we don't want to stay stuck or get stuck wallowing in our emotions, because it's very easy to get into a place where we're just feeling and feeling and feeling and feeling and feeling, but we're not actually healing, we're not actually moving forward. And we need to be doing that work of looking for the positive and looking on the bright side and doing all that work. And a lot of us can get into a state where we're wondering which one is the right answer, right? Which one are we supposed to do? Which one is the good one? Do I feel my feelings and is that going to heal me? Or do I need to be processing and then getting to a place where I'm actively working to shift my feelings and working to do things that feel good? And the answer is that both of these skills are required. Both of these skills are necessary. Both of these skills have their time and their place where they are applicable and where they are healing. And both of these skills can be used in certain times and places where they aren't helpful and where they do kind of keep us stuck. And it is really about learning how to discern when to use which tool that is the secret to all of this, right? So rather than thinking of one of them being right or one of them being wrong, because that's not the reality, we want to think of both of these tools are important, both of these things have their place, and just where do we apply them? That is the real question, is how do we know which tool to apply when and where? Because at the end of the day, this is the big thing that I really want to say again, over and over and over again, is that in the self-help, spirituality, personal growth world, we are often sold over and over and over again that there is a one way to do things, right? That there is a one path, there is a one mindset technique, there's a one processing technique, there's a one diet technique, there's a one way of doing things. And that if we just do that all the time, that's the answer to life, that we have the secret key, right? And this is a pattern in our way of thinking in the world in general. It's this, we want to have this security and this assuredness that our one thing that we always have is the answer to everything, right? What we fear the most a lot of the time is the fact that we are going to have to critically think about what is right and what is wrong, what is helpful, what is supportive, versus just having an answer that we can blanket on everything. And it's not that we are afraid of critical thinking, and it's not that we're incapable of critical thinking. It's that we haven't been trained in our culture to critically think. That's the big problem, right? Culture is constantly trying to sell us that there's a simple solution to everything and a one solution to everything. And if you find that right answer, then you always have that right answer. You always have that blanket solution to anything that could happen in your life. And that makes us feel secure, and that makes us feel like no matter what happens, I have the right answer. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about not knowing what to do. But in real reality, this is just not how life works. Life is more complex than that. There isn't a one answer to all of our problems. And the more we can get used to the idea that for the rest of our lives, we are going to have to be present in our current circumstances, and we are going to have to critically think about what is the best thing to do. We are going to have to learn some tools, and then we are going to have to figure out which tool to apply when and where. When we can make space for the idea that we are capable of that, life is going to feel a whole lot better. Okay? So this is the main first bottom line thing that I want to say to you. You are capable of gathering tools and figuring out which ones to apply where. You don't need a one answer that is your solution to everything. You can figure out how and where and when to apply your tools. Okay? So for instance, right, in the mystery school that I wrote, it is a 5-year-long program, and there are hundreds of tools in that school. There are so many different layers and levels and progressions and complexity in the school, because life is complex. I wrote it that way, and I laid it out that way with lots and lots of repetition, because that's how we learn. I also want to make that clear. None of us learn the first time. Repetition is how we learn. Okay? So if you're feeling bad about yourself, that you're hearing truths and you're understanding them and you're having these aha moments, and then you feel like you forget, and then you have to learn it again, and then you forget, and then you learn it again, that is normal. That's how we learn. That is how we learn as human beings. We are always going to learn through repetition. So don't get frustrated with yourself. If learning these self-love tools is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, do it 1 time, forget, do it 2 times, forget, that is normal. Don't be frustrated with yourself if you come back to these videos and you're just like, oh God, right? I've heard her say that 1,000,000 times, but I needed to hear it again, because that's normal. That's how this works. Okay? Learning happens through repetition. Learning happens through repetition. You're not going to learn anything the first, second, or 5th time. You're going to need to repeat these concepts over and over and over again. That's why I keep making these videos. That's why the mystery school is 5 years long, and there's so much repetition in there. Okay? But on top of that, there are many, many tools. And some of them, like what we're talking about today, can seem a little contradictory, right? Letting yourself feel your anger and just be in your emotion and not look for something better can look very contradictory to looking for the positive, looking for gratitude, looking for what is working, shifting yourself into a better emotional state. These two things can seem contradictory, and it can be like, how can you possibly be promoting both? How can you say that both are right? Because they look like they are so different from one another. And the answer is context. The answer is always, what is going to work for you for where you are? Okay? So I really want you to think about your life path and your life journey like climbing a mountain. And there are times and places on the mountain where the ground is just steep and it's rocks, and you have to like climb using your hands because it's such a steep climb. And if that's where you are going to need specific skills and specific tools to get up that mountain, up that part of the mountain. Then there's going to be parts of the mountain that are more flat, and maybe there's a river. And when you're crossing a river that's more flat, you need totally different tools and totally different skills than you did when you were climbing the rocky, steep part. And then there might be a valley where there's snakes. And you need, again, a different set of tools and a different set of skills to cross through that part of the mountain. Are any of the tools right or wrong? No. It just depends on where you are. So that means if you're at the rocky part and you're trying to apply the tools for what you would need when you're crossing a river, it's not going to work. You're not going to make progress because you're using the wrong tools at the wrong time. If you're comparing yourself to somebody who's crossing the river and you're trying to do what they're doing, when you're at the valley with the snakes, it's not going to work because that's not the right tool for that place. You see? So, again, with this work, we want to really move ourselves out of the mindset that there's a one right answer, that there's a one right way, that everyone is at the same place all the time. And we need to move into the reality that we need to figure out where we are on the map and what tools work for us. We need to figure out where we are on the mountain to keep up with the metaphor and what is appropriate at that point on the mountain. It is not about what is the right tool and what is the wrong tool. And how do I figure out what the right thing is? And then now I have the answer forever. It's how can I collect the tools so that no matter where I am on the mountain, I have the tools to work through that part of the mountain. That's what this path is about, right? That's why we focus so much on shifting from that mindset of trying to fix ourselves and trying to change ourselves and trying to make ourselves something specific into the mindset of how do I support myself. Because when we shift into how do I support myself, that is when we can actually be aware of where we are on the mountain. How do I support myself means I'm not placing an expectation on myself of where on the mountain I should be. I'm not placing an expectation on myself of the specific outcome that should be coming from the tools that I'm using. Rather, I am orienting myself to where I am on the mountain so that I can just take my next steps, whatever those steps are going to look like. And I can stop projecting onto myself all these expectations that may or may not have anything to do with reality, right? A lot of us on our healing path, and this is something that I work with my clients so much, have this idea of what we're supposed to be experiencing, have this idea of what we're supposed to be doing to heal, have this idea of what the path is supposed to look like. And when our experience doesn't match that, rather than being able to say, oh, my expectation was incorrect, that's just not what it's going to look like for me, we say, I must be doing it wrong. And then we try to force ourselves to be something that we aren't. And that doesn't work. Okay? So when we're looking at, should I be feeling my feelings? Or should I be reaching for the positive? The first thing we need to step into is understanding that we first need to figure out where we are on the mountain in order to determine which tool is the right tool for us. We need to say there isn't a right answer. There's just what's right for me right now. And then the next question is, which of these two tools feels most supportive for me right now? Instead of projecting onto ourselves, I should be able to just do something and then feel better immediately. Because that is the trap that most of us get in. Is that we're expecting to find tools that work immediately to make us feel better. And that is just not always going to be the case. We are going to find that as we start to really get good at self-support, that we are going to figure out that there are going to be times and places where we're just not going to feel better right now. Where the feelings and the processing and the doing the work that's actually important to help move us forward doesn't feel like the ultimate answer. It doesn't feel like ultimate relief. It doesn't feel like complete change and everything is different now and my whole life is healed and everything is transformed. That's just not how it's going to look. Right? There are going to be times and places on our path where the very best next right thing is hard and it doesn't feel good and it's uncomfortable. But if we're learning these tools of self-love, we're going to be able to feel in ourselves that it's right. Okay? So what's right for us doesn't always feel like bliss. It doesn't always feel like complete relief and release from whatever we're struggling with. It doesn't always feel good right now. But it will feel grounding. It will feel centering. It will feel supportive. It won't give you that feeling of being high and buzzed and this is the answer and I've figured it out and I've solved it. And it won't give you that sinking weight, this is the worst feeling. Okay? When something is right for us, it's going to feel grounded. It's going to feel nourishing. It's going to feel supportive. There is going to be a relief and a release in it to a degree, but it might not be perfect. It might not lead to the ultimate release. It might not be the ultimate answer, but that doesn't make it wrong, right? That makes it the next step. So when we are doing our healing work, when we are processing through life just in general, we need to understand it's going to be steps. It's going to be a process. There isn't a one thing that's going to heal you. And likely, we are more going to live lives where we just continually make progress. And eventually we get to a place where we think, wow, I'm like really not where I used to be. I'm really not experiencing what I used to experience. I am feeling so much better in ways that I didn't even notice I was, because the transition wasn't terrible, 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 terrible. I did this one thing and now I'm healed. The transition was I did all these different steps and now I'm at the top of the mountain. I just focused on where I was. I focused on the rocks when I was on the rocks. I focused on the river when I was at the river. I focused on the valley with the snakes when I was at the valley with the snakes. And now I'm at the top of the mountain and I don't even really know how I got here. That's what it's going to look like. That's what it's going to be like. You need to focus on where you are. So, how do we know when where we are is I just need to feel my feelings? That's the first question. When feeling my feelings is the most supportive thing. For most of us, that's where we need to start. Okay? So a lot of people who come to me for coaching or who come into the mystery school or whatever have lived lives where their feelings, their emotions, their experience has been ignored, has not been acknowledged, has not been validated, and they are stuck in loops of self-improvement, and I'm not good enough, and I'm not who I should be, and I need to fix myself, and there's all these things wrong with me, and I have all of these coping mechanisms and self-sabotaging behaviors and all of these things that are wrong with me, and I need to be fixed, right? And they come into coaching looking to be fixed. Or they come into the mystery school looking to be fixed. Or they come to these videos and they look to be fixed. And if that is where we are at, I need to fix myself. There's something wrong with me. I'm behaving in a way that I shouldn't be behaving. I'm acting in a way that makes no sense. I'm just messing up my own life for no reason because I'm flawed inherently. If that's where we're starting, good, the chances are good that where you're at on the path right now is learning to feel your feelings, learning to validate where you're at, taking a step back from trying to fix things about yourself. Because where you're at is a place where you need to be validated and seen in what you're in, who you are right now, what's actually real for you, what you've experienced, so that you can start to see your own innocence. Okay? This is really the gift and the outcome of feeling our feelings and validating our feelings that comes, that is beneficial, that is why we do this. We feel our feelings and we validate our feelings. We feel our feelings and we validate our feelings so that we can start to get clarity on what happened to us and why we are the way we are right now. Why we are feeling the way we're feeling right now. Why we're acting the way we're acting right now. Why we're behaving the way that we behave. Why we live how we live. Why we have our self-sabotaging behaviors. Why we have our coping mechanisms. Why we have our, behaviors of people-pleasing or hyper-independence or these things. We need to become aware. Feeling the feelings helps us to become aware. Feeling our feelings helps us to become aware. So if we are still in a state of feeling like we need to fix ourselves, if we are in a state of shame, blame, and guilt, I shouldn't be this way, my life wasn't bad enough, there's no way that this is because of my past or anything, this is just me being shitty, I feel guilty for not doing things for people or for being the way that I am or for taking space for myself. I don't feel capable of setting the healthy boundaries or doing the things that I need to do. I know what would be supportive and I can't get myself to do it. And I just lack discipline and I'm horrible. We're in our loops of trying to fix our bodies or trying to fix our relationship or trying to get a different job and it's just over and over and over again, we go back to the same scapegoat, right? If I could just figure out my career, if I could just figure out my finances, if I could just figure out my body, everything would be perfect. We are in a state where we need to feel our feelings. Validation is what you need in that moment. Because the reality is, you are doing everything that you're doing for a good reason. Every self-sabotaging behavior, every way that you numb, every way that you are trying to fix yourself, the scapegoats that we have, the thought blocking, right? The mindsets that just continue to tell us over and over again that we are just inherently flawed and we just need to be fixed. That all comes from not being able to feel what we were actually feeling when we were going through adverse experiences that may have just been normal to us. That is what happens when we were going through adverse experiences. We were developing these coping mechanisms and we aren't connecting the adverse experience and the adaptation. Because coping mechanisms, self-sabotage, not being able to set healthy boundaries, not being able to have healthy communication, the scapegoats that we have, they all come from experiencing something adverse where we were not supported, we were not getting our needs met, we were being hurt or harmed on some level, and then we adapted. And as we start to feel our real feelings, we are going to be able to start to see where what we went through, even though it was normal to us, even though it seemed fine to us, because that's just what it was, wasn't actually fine, was harmful, hurt. We didn't get our needs met. We got things we didn't need. Feeling our feelings is how we figure out why we adapted the way we adapted, how we were hurt and how we were harmed, and how that led us to habits and ways of life that are an adaptation to that harm, that are now our default way of being, that cause harm. You see, this is the point of feeling our feelings. But most of us don't know how to actually feel our feelings, right? We think we're feeling guilt. We think we're feeling, again, right? Like a lot of us are thinking thoughts of, I'm broken, I'm shameful, I shouldn't be doing this, there's something wrong with me, I am just this way for no reason. And those thoughts are very familiar to us. They are very familiar. And we are misinterpreting the feeling of a thought being familiar with a thought being true. And these are two different things. Just because you have thought a gabillion times, so it feels comfortable, it feels right, because you've been living your life thinking that thought over and over and over again, and then finding justification for that thought, and then acting on that thought, trying to fix yourself, trying to change yourself, trying to make yourself different, trying to make yourself better. does not make the thought true. Because every single time when I ask somebody, okay, how does that thought feel? They say, it feels true. And then I say, what do you mean by that? I'm like, if you actually feel in your body, somatically, what that thought feels like. I'm just broken. I'm shitty. I have no reason for doing this behavior. I'm just doing it for no reason. I need to be fixed. I am shameful. I am broken. These habits, I have no reason for having them. I just developed them in my adulthood to mess myself up. I should be different. This is all my fault. I have no excuse for this. Yeah? All of these thoughts. When people actually tune in to the physical sensations that arise when they think those thoughts, they are contracting, they feel heavy, they feel like pukey, they feel twisty, nauseous in the stomach. And that is your body communicating to you, this thought isn't true. This thought is not true. It feels familiar. We've thought it a million times. We've based our life around it. But when I actually feel how it feels terrible. It does not feel good. And so when we can start to get to that, oh, okay. That is not what I'm actually feeling. When I engage in my self-sabotaging behavior and I feel guilty and shameful, that is not my real feeling. That is not the feeling that I'm feeling. So then we challenge that. We go deeper. What are you actually feeling? When you were being driven to do your self-sabotaging behavior, what occurred before that drove you into that behavior? What were you feeling? What were you experiencing? And so much of the time, people were feeling overwhelmed. They were feeling rejected. They were feeling unsafe. They were feeling triggered. But they were never taught how to even become aware of that. And they were never given tools for working through that. So they adapted by coping, by people pleasing, by looking for someone to serve, by nitpicking their bodies, by trying to perfect themselves in some way that they got trained in their childhood would make them good, and then make them lovable, and then make them safe. That is what is happening. So as we start to feel our real feelings, as we actually start to feel our feelings, we start to be able to notice where thoughts that we're thinking that are familiar to us are not actually true. And we start to be able to see where we experienced adverse experiences that deeply impacted our behavior that were just normal to us. Because this is the real gift of our feelings. Our minds can be programmed and conditioned to believe anything. What we experienced in childhood, what we experienced growing up, was normal to us. Meaning, many of us are not able to identify where and how we were hurt. But that does not mean that because we weren't consciously perceiving that we were being hurt, that we then didn't get hurt, and that we then didn't develop adaptations to that hurt. If it was normal for you to wake up in the morning and get punched in the face, chances are your brain is not going to perceive that as abuse. You're going to look back on your childhood and think, yeah, you wake up and you get punched in the face. But that does not mean that you're not getting bruised. That doesn't mean that you're not getting hurt. You are. The harm still exists, whether you're aware of it or not, whether you're perceiving it as harm or perceiving it as normal. The result is the same. You are then going to develop an adaptation of feeling like you flinch every time someone raises a fist. So then you go out into the world and everyone else is fine when someone raises a fist, and you flinch every time, and you've got bruises. And you're thinking, what's wrong with me that I have purple eyes and no one else does? What's wrong with me that I keep flinching and no one else does? I need to fix myself. Because to you, getting punched in the face is normal. I'm just broken that I have black eyes and I flinch. No. If you start to actually feel your feelings, you're going to be able to notice, wait, getting punched in the face really hurts. The root of my behavior and the root of my black eyes is not that there's something wrong with me. It's that I shouldn't have been getting punched in the face. Other people aren't getting punched in the face. That's why they don't act how I act, and that's why they don't look how I look. Oh, your feelings will let you know. Getting punched in the face doesn't feel good. So even though that was normal, it wasn't healthy. It wasn't supportive. It wasn't good for me. So when you start to feel your feelings, you're going to be able to start to pick apart what was normal for you, but not healthy. And then how you adapted. And that is the kind of validation and support that we need. Because if we keep trying to fix ourselves, I need to just stop flinching. I need to just stop having black eyes. But we're continually being punched in the face? We can't fix ourselves enough so that being punched in the face doesn't equal a black eye. We can't fix ourselves enough that we don't flinch when someone raises a fist when we've been punched in the face our whole lives. We need support. We need boundaries. We need to then start to realize where we're still being punched in the face, or how to heal ourselves somatically from that experience now that we're out of it. Okay? So the phase of feeling our feelings isn't necessarily going to feel amazing right away. Because again, when we're in that state of I can just fix myself, a lot of the time for a lot of us that feels really empowering. That's why we do it. That's why the world is addicted to self-help and self-improvement. Because it feels like I'm going to be able to get rid of my pain by just fixing the one thing I have control over, which is me. And we're not aware of the fact that we're being punched in the face or that that's wrong. So fixing that, which is the real thing that needs to be fixed, doesn't look like an option. We're only thinking the only thing that is wrong here is me. It must be something wrong with me. And so I will fix myself. I will just change my behavior. I'll white knuckle my way through it. I'll heal my body. I'll get my finances sorted out. I'll get my job sorted out. And then I'll feel secure. And then I'll feel lovable. And then I'll feel safe. And we're not even thinking that usually most of the time. And then everything will be better. But that's not reality. Okay? Feeling our feelings is a complex process of first figuring out what we're actually feeling. because it's not shame, blame, and guilt. And then figuring out where those feelings came from. The actual anger, the sadness, the upset. And then we process through those feelings to help us figure out what we need. Anger shows us where we need to set boundaries, where things hurt. Sadness shows us where we need to grieve things we didn't get, or that we missed out on, or that we lost. Resentment shows us where we were harmed by others and what we need to repair. These emotions, the real emotions that we're feeling, will then lead us into what we need. And that's where the healing happens, right? It's not necessarily that just feeling your anger heals you because there's some magic thing in feeling your anger. Feeling your anger will alert you to what is angering you. And then when we remedy that, we will feel better. But we need that validation first. You have a right to be angry about that. You have a right to be sad about that. This isn't something wrong with you. And you've been blaming yourself for this your whole life and trying to fix yourself and trying to change yourself. You see? This is what feeling our feelings is all about. This is what we do in coaching. This is what we do in the mystery school. This is what we do around here. Because it is challenging. It is really hard to get ourselves out of our perspectives. That there's just something wrong with me and I'm broken and I need to fix myself. That these shame, blame, and guilt thoughts, even recognizing that we're thinking shame, blame, and guilt thoughts instead of just observing objective reality, I'm wrong and I shouldn't be like this. Even just being able to recognize that that is shame and therefore not real for a lot of us is a huge step. Because again, these thoughts are so familiar that we're not even aware that we're thinking them. We're not even aware that we could question them. Okay? Now, where is positive thinking and looking for the good applicable? When we've gone through the process of validating, when we've gone through the process of getting good at learning how to validate our feelings and to feel our feelings and to say, okay, it makes sense that I'm angry, even if I can't understand why right now. I have a good reason for feeling angry. I'm going to get curious about this anger instead of just shutting it down. I'm feeling shame right now. Okay, what am I actually feeling? Am I scared? Am I lonely? Am I sad? Am I angry? Am I being hurt? And then I'm looking to scapegoat that onto something bad that I'm doing or something wrong with me. That when we get good at that, that's when we're ready for the tool of positive thinking and working from looking for solutions and looking for what is working and looking for what does feel good so we can start to build our lives. Okay? Because the other side of the coin is that our feelings are also there to let us know when things are correct for us. Our feelings are also there to help let us know when we're thinking a thought that isn't true and when we're thinking a thought that is true. So once we get good at feeling the pain and feeling the anger and the sadness and all these things, we then want to start to attune to the thoughts and the actions and the words and the ways of life that feel good, that are supportive, that help move us in a new direction. And again, this can be really challenging and feel really uncomfortable because a lot of us, right, we have thought our negative thoughts about ourselves and about our lives, and about how things can't work and we're not going to ever figure it out and there's no way forward, and if I can't fix myself, there is no point, and all these things. So much that starting to believe that something else could be true, starting to believe that there are other answers, starting to believe that we could empower ourselves and that we can take steps to make things better and that we can improve our lives, and that maybe our perception of things might be incorrect, can be really scary and challenging. Okay? And again, understanding that looking for the positive and the having gratitude is not about pretending that things that actually feel like shit feel fine. It's not that. That is not real gratitude. That's bypassing. That's lying to yourself. That's invalidating yourself. Pretending things that don't feel good is not gratitude. That's denial. Gratitude and looking for the positive is where we start to say, okay, when I think the thought, this isn't my fault, I'm acting this way because of conditioning, it feels better than thinking that I'm just a piece of shit who's ruining my own life. And even though that thought is unfamiliar, and it makes me go, well, what do I do then? I don't know how to heal. I don't know how to move forward. If it's not just me being broken, I don't know what the answer is. We have to start to trust that, okay, if I just open myself up to this better feeling thought, even though I don't know what it means, even though I don't know where it's going to go, even though I don't necessarily know what to do with it, by opening up my perception to this new, better feeling thought, I'm opening myself up to new information that's going to help me move forward in my life. We have to be okay with being in the unknown when we're opening up to new thoughts that feel better. That's usually the block that most people have around positive thinking. The two blocks. The first block around positive thinking is trying to force ourselves to be positive about things that we're not actually positive about. Trying to force ourselves to feel okay with things that don't actually feel okay. Trying to force ourselves to be in a perspective that we're not actually in. That's not what this is about, right? So that's the bypassing crew. We don't want to go there. You want to look for thoughts that genuinely feel good in your body. You want to look for behaviors that genuinely feel supportive for you. You want to start to move from a place of what is working and how can I study that? How can I build on that? How can I understand why it's working and how it's working? And how I can funnel more of my energy towards that. And then the second trap, right, is these better feeling thoughts make it so that I don't have a plan. If I'm not just broken, if what I'm doing is an adaptation, if I was harmed and hurt and now I'm living in a way that's, out of alignment with reality, and I'm starting to see that, whoa, my perception of myself and my perception of the world and my perception of what was going to fix me and make me feel better was wrong. Now I don't know what to do. Now I don't have my answer. Right? If fixing my body isn't going to fix it, then what is? If becoming my ideal self isn't going to fix it, then what is? If I just get rid of my self-sabotaging behavior isn't going to fix it, then what is? We have to open ourselves to the unknown and to the uncomfortable. We have to start to let ourselves do new things and not know how it's going to go. We have to be open to, if I just start to open my perspective to this new thought, new awareness and new information will filter in eventually. New answers will start to come. They're not necessarily going to be there right in the beginning. And that's when we trust that we're just climbing the mountain and that all we ever need to make progress in our life path is the next step. And again, when we start to attune to the things that feel good, instead of constantly living from these thoughts that feel terrible, familiar but terrible, we are starting to tune our perception to different information, different steps, different ways of life. This is why, hanging out with different people who have a different perspective than you can be so healing and freeing, and why staying around the people who are like you can be so trapping. Because if we're just being inundated with the same information and the same perspectives and the same patterns over and over and over again, you see, you're never going to actually see what's going on and why it's happening and why you're doing what you're doing and what you need to be different. Because you're being exposed to the same information over and over again. And if that information is wrong, you're just broken, you're just messed up. This is how life is, and you just need to be okay with it. If that is the information you have, every solution that you come up with within that incorrect fundamental assumption isn't going to take you where you want to go. That's why fixing yourself never works for any of us. Because it's based on a fundamental assumption, a fundamental perception that's not in alignment with reality. We need a new perspective. We need a different source of information. We need a different answer. The right answer. And so when we reach for these better feeling thoughts, what we're actually doing is tuning our awareness to different answers. And as we do that, as we open to that, instead of automatically going, well, I don't know where this is going, I don't know what the ultimate answer is, I don't know what the solution is, if I have to let go of my old thought, but I don't have anything to replace it with, forget it. We're never going to get anywhere. We're going to be stuck with what we have, and if it's not working, it's not going to start working. So the positive thinking comes when we're ready to start to challenge the things that we discovered in our feeling our feelings phase. The looking for the better feeling thoughts, the looking for the better feeling steps, the looking for the what feels like a yes in my body and how can I just follow that and trust it a little bit. Not knowing where it's going to go, not necessarily having the whole answer, not having the whole picture. Just, this is just my next best feeling thought, my next best feeling step. That is how we figure it out. That is how we make progress in life. You're never going to have the whole answer. And opening to better feeling thoughts and opening to better feeling perspectives is always going to be uncomfortable. And it's always going to bring up the but what if, but what if, but what if, but what if, but. We're going to fight for the old perspective because the old perspective, no matter how painful it was, is familiar. We know what to do with that. We don't know what to do with the new perspective. The new perspective is uncomfortable, and it's scary, and it's challenging. But that's exactly what's good about it. So even though it will feel weird, when you tune into your body, you will notice that it feels right. And then we start to follow those better feeling thoughts. We start to take action based on those better feeling things. And slowly over time, we climb the mountain. And then we end up at the top and we don't even know how we got there. And then we are going to be alternating between these two things for the rest of our lives. Because there are always going to be things that are happening to us. We're always going to be having experiences that we first need to feel. And then we reach for the better feeling thought and look for what's working. And open ourselves to new perspectives. And open ourselves to new steps where we don't know where it's going, but we just have to follow it because it feels good. And then we learn, right, the difference between false pleasure and true pleasure. Because a lot of us are following things that feel good right now, but feel bad later. You see? That's why, again, there's just so many tools, and we figure this out. But it's a step-by-step process. And we learn through repetition. You're going to feel your feelings a lot. You're going to reach for better feelings a lot. You're going to do a new thing a lot. You're going to give yourself permission not to do a new thing when that's appropriate. Right? There isn't a right answer. There's a right answer for you right now, based on where you're at. Some people need to push themselves and go to the gym. Some people need to rest. Neither of these answers are right. It's just what is applicable to you right now. Okay? So I hope that was helpful. Hope that was clarifying on some level. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them down in wherever you're watching this. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Thank you for listening. Yeah, that's that. I never know really how to close these things other than you're great. There's nothing wrong with you. Thank you for being here. And I will see you when I see you. Okay.